presentation. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Susan Pulliam, who is in charge of our Office of Student Assignment, and she's going to give us the lay of the land for this year.
Thank you so much, Chair Mahaffey, and to the entire board. Before I get started, I want to do a special thanks to my entire student assignment team and a special recognition to Corrali Turnow with the Communications Department and Ryan Cooper and Rob Sywick in our Geospatial Analytics. They're responsible for making sure that all the things that are getting ready to go live, and I think about 30 seconds, are functioning properly for all of our families. So thank you again for this opportunity to share the first draft. As Chair Mahaffey recognized, this is the first of several drafts that will be presented to you with the goal of bringing a final recommendation for November 21st. As a reminder, the specific reason for gathering today to talk about the first draft is to not only inform you as to what staff's recommendations are here in the first draft, but also to solicit feedback as we prepare and revise draft 2. I will get my words. I apologize. If you know me at all, you will know that this slide enters just about every presentation that I give because it reminds us of the policy that anchors our work. Board Policy 4150 on school assignment and transfers includes a separate section about the drawing of school attendance areas that specifically reminds us that our attendance areas should consider 4 main pillars or factors, and that's student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency. The graphic to the right of the screen is to remind us that no one factor is necessarily considered a higher priority than the others. While student achievement is always top of mind in the school district, we do as a staff always consider all 4 pillars when making recommendations for your review. For today, we're going to break our presentation up really into 3 sections. The first is our updates, just to remind everybody who's listening, as well as our board and our staff, how we got to this point. It is not something that happens in isolation. It's not a single project. It's something that starts as early as the spring of each year and really is a continuum of work from prior years. So we want to make sure we share those updates with you to help you have that backstory. The second portion of our presentation will focus on the first draft recommendations. The third portion will be making sure that everyone knows where we are in our timeline and sequence for the process, as well as how to engage, how to be involved, what our next steps are. I won't go through the addendum during our presentation, but it is available for families, and I'll just make sure we know what's included when we get there. I will ask, since this is a lengthy presentation, if you can take notes as we go along so that we can make sure that I get through the presentation in a timely fashion, and then we can come back and answer any questions once the presentation is complete. So please get your stickies ready and your pencils and your pens, but please do make sure you make a note of any questions that you may have. My goal is that they'll all be answered by the time we get to the end of the presentation, but I'm sure that that will not be true. For our updates, we want to start with our public engagement progress. I don't really call it a process because it never stops. It's just a continuous progression of how we're working to engage our families differently, as well as in true and authentic and genuine ways. So before we get started, as Ms. Mahaffey mentioned in the opening, there will be a place to plug in, and we want to make sure everybody knows where it is. You will see this slide a couple of times in today's presentation because I want to make it crystal clear. Please go here. This is our one-stop shop. It is now live. On this enrollment proposal site, you will find details about the plan, links to the presentation that's being shared. You will find a link to the public comment capture tool known as Thought Exchange. You will also find information about virtual public information sessions that will follow today's presentation, and the address lookup tool, the famed address lookup tool. We've checked with our technology department. We're fairly certain it's ready to take the load, but when you go to the address lookup tool, that's an opportunity to type in your own home address and see if your address is impacted in any way by the BASE or calendar application recommendations. I just wanted to pause for a moment and do a quick review of the community engagement sessions. I will recognize that actually all of this information was shared with you on June 20th during a prior work session. But again, telling that story of how we got from where we started to where we are. So just as a reminder, recognizing that Woods Creek is projected to open for 24-25 as an elementary school in the Apex area, and that we have 5 other schools that are projected to open in the 25-26 school year, we wanted to get a head start in engaging families in these communities to get their thoughts and input on how we should manage growth, and crowding, as well as what we should know about their communities as we're considering assignment plans for these new schools. So as a reminder, we had a total of 190 participants show up to these live face-to-face engagement sessions, and we had an additional 705, or a total of 705 participants engage in the online thought exchanges that complemented these sessions. The first question that we asked these small groups while we were together face-to-face was, what are the most important things that district leadership should be aware of and take into consideration when managing enrollment growth and school crowding? And across the board, this is a general summary of what we learned from all of those groups sort of consistently across all of the groups. If you're interested in reviewing this material, it is posted to our site, so you can go back and look at all of the individual responses from each of those sessions, but this is a generalized summary. I would like to call special attention to the third bullet about allowing for cohort continuity for students as they promote to middle and high school, as well as the third to the last bullet, being able to start and finish at the same school, and the final bullet that reads, avoid assignments to multiple schools for the same neighborhood. While all of the feedback that we receive from families is critical to our work, I think you'll see a trend toward recognizing these three elements throughout the recommendations that have been prepared for you today. The question that we asked through the thought exchange was, what are the most important things that leadership should be aware of and take into consideration when opening a new school in your community? For this particular thought exchange, we actually had separate and individual thought exchanges to make sure we could capture that feedback area by area, community by community. Overall, when taken together, these were the core themes. Again, we talked through these in June. These were the core themes that resonated or came out of these thought exchanges, that topics like communication, continuity, crowding, plans for growth, proximity, quality education for all, school choice, school operations, and transportation were mega themes that really came out of the input that we received from that question. I highlighted for you one of our sample set of results specific to Woods Creek Elementary, as that is the one new school that is actually projected to open within this plan. And we just wanted to show you that clearly proximity, transportation, and continuity were top of mind for families impacted in this area. The other graphs for the other schools were included in the June 20th materials if anyone wants to go back and see those. We also at that time reminded you that there are always questions that come out of these types of public engagement that still are lingering for us. One topic that came up in conversation was the thought of, or the concept of, cohort continuity. And as staff, we certainly know what those words mean to us, but we weren't quite sure that we really knew what it meant for all families. And so we really wanted to dig deeper into that topic and see what families could tell us about that. And then we also noticed there was a distinct lack of discussion about calendar. And I think we talked about it during our June 20th session, that maybe there was some presumptions about what the calendars would be, or maybe there were some foregone conclusions. So we really wanted to dive into that with some focus groups. In addition, we wanted to use the information we collected to help us really think about our stability rules for this particular plan and to look at our feeder patterns where possible for adjustment. This is new. At the time that I presented to you in June, we had not completed our focus groups, and so I wanted to share with you the results of that work. Based again on that feedback that we received from those public engagement sessions, we really wanted to dig deeper into those two concepts of cohort continuity and school calendar alignment. We partnered with data research and accountability staff to conduct these focus groups, basically to gain a deeper understanding of the parents' concerns and thoughts and ideas and priorities specific to these two areas. We did hold 3 separate sessions that had anywhere from 5 to 7 participants per session. I'm told we're doing great in our department on getting participants in our focus groups. But I will caution everyone that focus groups clearly are a small portion of our population, and in this particular instance, we did focus on those families that are impacted by those new schools that are opening. So it is very regional. And so we do need to be careful about not taking these results and extending them across the entire district, but they certainly are meaningful for this area and for these communities. The 3 core takeaways that we pulled from these focus groups was, first, when it comes to cohort continuity, the one unifying factor was keeping students together. Now that looks very different from family to family. Some families talked about it meaning that the whole neighborhood should probably be in the same school, and that to them is keeping students together. Other families said, really, if we're on the same calendar, maybe even a track, that creates a sense of community, and we want to keep those students together. So if we're all on track 3, let's continue moving forward on track 3 together type of sentiments. And then others were maybe a more simplistic approach of, hey, if we're in 5th grade together, can we go to 6th grade together as we promote to the next level? Or if we're in 8th grade together, can we go to 9th grade together as we promote to the next level? So we did get a lot of distinctive and unique responses to this question, but the sort of core binding idea was keeping students together. And so it did give our staff a lot to think about as we came up with recommendations for this year. The second bullet, again, I'll reiterate, this is specific to this region, but we did find when asking families as we deal with growth and crowding, particularly in a high growth area, what are your preferences? Reassignment, capping, maybe changing the calendar to year-round so we can increase the capacity at that school. And literally, without question, it was use the year-round calendar where you can first. And that was a change, I think, and a shift. We started to see some of that with last year's focus groups, but again, I have to be very cautious. This is just in this region. I want to be very careful not to stretch this across our entire district. I don't truly believe that we would hear those same responses in other parts of our county, but for this part of the county, it did seem to be supportive.
And can you just remind us again how far that region spread?
I'll show you on the maps, but it started sort of from the Alston Ridge area, all the kind of on the outside of 540 and 55, and then comes down into the Holly Springs and Fuquay Marina area, gets a large swath of the Apex and Western Cary portion. So it was a large area of the county, but mostly in the western and southern regions.
Thank you.
The third bullet that you'll see here is calendar alignment. We did start to pose a question because it doesn't always come up organically, but we did want to get thoughts from these families about calendar alignment. We have talked historically over the last several years about K-8 calendar alignment, and we really talk about multi-track year-round when we're really using that language. That if I have a multi-track year-round elementary school, could we be partnered with a multi-track middle school so we can have K-8 calendar alignment as a family? We are seeing in areas that we also have what would be recognized as 6-12 calendar alignment. Perhaps you're a multi-track year-round elementary school, but you have a traditional middle and traditional high school. And so we really wanted to dig in where we could and see if we could get some consensus. And the short answer is we could not. It's very inconclusive on this question. It's early stages. We're going to continue to probe this. From my experience in reading the results and listening in on some of the sessions, it seems that if the students are younger, and we even see a recognition of students with special needs, that a K-8 calendar alignment seemed to make sense for families that were being asked, let's say when their child's in kindergarten or first grade today, what they're thinking long term. But if you ask the families that already have a high school student or a student that's transitioned to middle school, they can also see the benefits of that traditional calendar alignment 6-12. So again, it doesn't give us broad sweeping results that we can use to make our decisions, but it is a question we can continue to ask families. So from there, where do we go? So those focus groups concluded over the summer, and we're now ready to release draft 1, obviously, which we're doing today, and we're going to start engaging with our families. First, as Corelli shared with me, we're good to go. Our website is up and live. So the 2024 enrollment proposal page is live. It has several sections. We encourage families to maybe start with the address lookup tool and see if your address is impacted, and then if it is, to go into some of the other resources to see how you're being impacted and perhaps why. September 19th to October 6th, we've already launched the Thought Exchange. The link is embedded on that same website. We encourage all families, this is my public service announcement, all families, please put your comments, questions, concerns, support notes. I don't like this note. You forgot about this note. Whatever it is that you want staff and the board to be able to see, please put it into the Thought Exchange. It's a tool that we used last year with great success. It gives us a couple of benefits. One, as board members, you can log in and see every single comment that's posted. As staff, we can collect every single comment, analyze and assess those, and make sure we're not missing any because they're all together in the one platform. And third, working and partnering with our communication staff, we continue to monitor and call the comments to see where there are questions that are coming up or misconceptions that are coming up, so we can update the frequently asked questions portion of our website, as well as provide updates to you when we come in October. So it really was a great success for us last year in helping to get information to families, so we really want to encourage families to continue to use it. As a reminder about how Thought Exchange works, Families will be prompted with a question, what are your thoughts and reflections on the current draft? Then they'll be asked to create essentially a virtual sticky note. Tell me a thought, maybe expand on it, submit. Tell me another thought, maybe expand on it, submit. Once they get through putting in the comments they want to make sure staff is able to see, they will then be presented with a random assortment of existing comments and asked to rank them. It's a 1 to 5 star rating system where 1 is either I disagree with this, or this doesn't apply to me, this doesn't seem important to me type of a rating. Where a 5 would be, oh, I'm so glad someone put this in here, this is great, I wish I would have thought of this, or this is exactly what I was thinking and is very similar to what I wrote. And what this will help us do as staff is to see, sometimes we'll have a lot of volume on one issue, and other times we might have 1 or 2 comments that get a lot of support from the district in terms of parents and families being able to let us know that this is a significant point. So we really, really encourage families to participate in the thought exchange, check it regularly, revisit, rank thoughts as often as you can, because that'll give us the feedback we need to make any potential adjustments for draft 2. The third thing you see on the slide is September 26th to October 5th are our virtual public information sessions. And so these will all be hosted using a Google Meet link, and all of these links are already posted to the website so families can access those at the start times for each of them. And we'll talk more about how we'll record these and make these available for families afterward as well. But right now, families should be receiving an email, or over the next several hours, they should be receiving an email that lets them know that the website is live, a brief explanation of the plan, probably encouraging them to watch us live now as we're on YouTube Live for our district's website. As we get towards the end of the presentation, you'll see a similar slide, and I'll talk you through all the additional things that we're doing to expand our outreach. Again, there's our website. I told you it'll show up a lot. We want to make sure we're being very clear that this is the best place, one-stop shop, to get all the information you're looking for about this current draft. The next update we'd like to provide is very similar to what you've seen over the last several months, dating back all the way to February 21st. We do have a number of capped and overcrowded schools in the district, and those are things that we have to consider when we're thinking about the operational efficiency pillar. And so just as a reminder, the list here represents the 20 elementary schools that are currently capped in the district. Again, as a public service announcement, if a school is capped, it doesn't necessarily mean that students that are new to the area can't go to the school. So you should always contact the school first. It's possible that they might have room for you at your grade level, but you won't know unless you call the school first. So always contact that base school first. If for some reason they have hit their limit and they are actively what we call capping students out, then they'll work with you to help you find your overflow school. So again, these are the 20 elementary schools that are currently capped as approved by the board back in February. In addition, this is a map that represents what our projected crowding is for this school year based on the data that we had in February. The red represents schools that are projected to be over 110% crowded this year. The orange represents schools that are projected to be between 100 and 110%. The yellow represents schools that are projected to be between 90 and 100% crowded. And then the white spaces that you see are schools that will be projected to be at or below 89% crowded for the current school year. And you'll notice there's a combination of multi-track year-round and traditional and single-track. All the different types of calendars are impacted by crowding. As we go on to slide 24, you'll see that this is the listing of the current capped middle and high schools. Again, same message, please contact the school first. It's possible that they're not actively capping out. And then the slides you see on 25 and 26 are the same visual of the projected crowding beyond just capping for our middle schools and high schools. So 25 shows you that projected crowding for middle school. Again, the red means the over 110% projection. And on 26, you see the projected crowding for our area high schools. Again, the red being over 110% projected crowding. As a reminder, just one last time, you've seen these since February, so none of this information has changed. Moving on to slide 27, our next update is regarding our capital improvement plan. As a reminder, it's a 7-year plan for the opening of future school sites. This specifically focuses on what we know about new school construction, this particular slide. So you'll notice in the 23-24 column, currently Baucom Elementary is residing in or operating in the Woods Creek site as a swing space while its campus is being renovated. It's projected to be complete by the end of this school year so that we can open and fully operate Woods Creek for the 24-25 school year. And then in 25-26, you see a number of schools listed that are projected to open ranging from elementary to middle to high school campuses. You'll notice there's a bit of a break in 26, 27. There's a projected high school opening, Morrisville High School, in 27, 28. No new schools are projected to open at this time for 28, 29, or 29, 30. And then we do have the Pool Road Elementary site that has yet to be named that is projected to open for 2030, 31. I need to call attention to the asterisk at the top of the slide and remind everybody that due to market volatility, scope changes, design and construction schedule changes, it is possible for some of these projects to have adjustments to their schedule. As we know more, we'll share with you, but that does live within facilities design and construction, so we take their lead on those updates. As a reminder about where these schools are physically located, again, to sort of address Mr. Hagerty's question from earlier, you'll notice that where the red circle is and where the blue circles are, that was the range of areas where we reached out for public engagement in the spring, and that sort of manifested the focus group population that we worked with. The red circle represents the location of Woods Creek, which we do have a recommendation for you today for. The blue circles represent the schools that are projected to open in 25, 26. We will not be bringing base attendance areas this year, but we will be bringing them next fall. And then the two remaining sites that are in the out years are the Morrisville High School and the Pool Road site off of Pool Road. All right, what we came for. Our goal is for you to recognize that the recommendations we're about to review reflect the guidance from Policy 4150, the input and feedback gathered from our families and community members, not just this past spring, but over the last several years as well. A need to address capped and overcrowded schools while being mindful of the future schools that will be opening, as well as major renovations. I will pause, we didn't talk about those, as there are several major renovations that will be going on throughout the district during that same 7-year window, and some of those will garner for us some additional capacity at those sites, and so we are keeping that in mind as we make our recommendations. Also, we would be remiss if we did not say that some of the recommendations are in place to help us support our need to improve transportation efficiency as well. As we talk about the recommendations for the base assignment changes, we'll start with an overview of the schools that are proposed to be impacted by the base assignment changes. So the next 3 slides will be a district level look at schools that potentially will be impacted at the elementary, middle, and high school level for base assignment changes. Slide 34 reflects in the column on the left titled Sending Schools that the elementary schools on the list on the left are projected to be impacted with a base assignment change. It could be anywhere from nominal to significant. The second column that's titled Receiving Schools then are schools in the plan that are proposed to receive students from a different school. The map on the right gives you an overview of the distribution of where these recommendations are located. And I would like to take a moment and note that in an effort to impact the least number of students possible, we traditionally look at pre-assigning vacant or undeveloped land when possible to get ahead of projected growth in areas. And we'll try to point those out as we go through. Therefore, some of the recommendations that you see here will impact no current students. This map on page 35 is then a reflection of our recommendations at the middle school level, and I will note that this year all of these are complementary to the elementary school recommendations. On slide 36, we'll see then the recommendations at the high school level. Again, these are all complementary to that pattern that is starting at the elementary level with the recommendations for this year. The recommendations for base assignment changes have been organized into 4 different regions to help align with our future virtual public information sessions. So if a family sees that their school is listed in the southern area and southwestern area section, that would be the best virtual public information session for them to attend, because we'll focus on the recommendations in this area during those sessions. However, I'll talk about a general overview that we'll also provide toward the end of that series. So in the southern and southwestern area, we start with our one new school for the year. Woods Creek Elementary is projected to open in July of 2024. What you see here is the architect's artist rendering of the campus. On slide 39, you see some of the core information. We are recommending from a staff perspective that Woods Creek open as a multi-track year-round campus. which would provide an ultimate capacity of 924 students over time. We are recommending that students that currently attend Apex Elementary, Holly Springs Elementary, and Oak View Elementary be impacted by the opening of this school. The table that you see toward the bottom of the screen reflects those current base school assignments, their current calendar. The T stands for traditional, the M-T stands for multi-track year-round. The third column titled capacity with trailers, we do need to clarify, if a school doesn't have trailers, we still list its capacity in this column to reflect the maximum capacity of the campus for the coming school year. So there are a handful of schools on these lists that won't have trailers. However, it is the way for us to display the maximum capacity for the school going into the 24-25 school year. And then the column on the right then represents a projection of enrollment for those schools based on that higher end capacity. What you're seeing here on this particular table is that if we make no changes, these are the projected enrollments at these schools for 24-25. You can see all of them would be red on our crowding map. Yes, 2 of them are capped. Actually, yes, 2 of them are capped, correct. As we move on to slide 40, I'll take a moment to orient us to how the slides are set up. So what you'll see on the map slides is that the map on the left will represent the current base attendance area for schools that are projected to be impacted by the recommendation. The hashed out areas in that map on the left are the areas that are specifically recommended to have a change. The circle is to draw your attention to that location so that you can be aware of, hey, focus in on this part of the map, because sometimes it's small, and we want to make sure it's easy to find that area. The map on the right then would represent, if the board were to approve the plan as it's recommended today, those would be the new base attendance areas for these schools. So coming back to looking at the Woods Creek map, the map on the left represents an area that shows the base attendance area for the current Oakview, Apex, and Holly Springs Elementary campuses. The darker blue area that's running south of US 1 corridor, that's what we're oriented, and the lake there is by the Sharon Harris area. So the blue is representing the Oakview Elementary current base attendance area. The light purple that candidly has a lot of hashing on it represents the existing Holly Springs Elementary base attendance area. This is an area where we're talking about a lot of vacant or undeveloped land. And then the darker purple to the right represents the current Oak Grove Elementary base attendance area, and so all of those are sort of below the US 1 threshold. The orangish yellow color that's on the top of US 1 or north of US 1, as well as the portion that's just below US 1 and inside of 55, represents the current Apex Elementary base attendance area. The recommendation is to take the portion of Apex Elementary that is south of US 1 and east of 55 and assign that to Woods Creek. To take a large portion of the Holly Springs Elementary base attendance area that is west of 55 and south of 1 and assign that to Woods Creek. And to take a portion, very small portions, of the current Oakview base attendance area that are either on Woods Creek Road or very proximate to the road that connects with Woods Creek Road. And so you'll see that Oakview is not impacted significantly by this geographically. Holly Springs has the largest geographic impact. But again, much of this area is undeveloped or vacant, and so we're pre-assigning it as the growth is getting ready to come. Several of the subdivisions in this area are already under construction and set to start offering contracts. So if we can assign them before that happens, then we won't have to reassign. You'll find a second map associated with this recommendation on 41 that looks very similar, but we want to draw your attention to a complementary recommendation to continue to relieve Holly Springs by supporting and using available capacity at Oak Grove Elementary. So the portion that's circled on the map on the left here on slide 41 would be recommended to go from Holly Springs Elementary to Oak Grove Elementary. Again, there is an area in here that's undeveloped and currently under construction, and so this would be an area that we're trying to move the students before they move in. Slide 42, I'll take a moment and walk you through how these slides are set up. So these slides then will show you in the top chart, or the one that's labeled 23-24 base school, if we do nothing. So for all of the schools that are in the recommendation, if we were to make no changes, they would keep the calendars that they have today, traditional multi-track for Apex, Holly Spring, Oakview, and Oak Grove respectively. Again, that capacity with trailers column represents the maximum capacity of the school going into the 24-25 school year. The 24-25 utilization with trailers rate shows us what the crowding would be at the school if we made no assignment changes. And then we do add in, now on this slide, a projection that goes out a couple of years to the 26-27 school year based on what we know about residential development and the forecast process that, again, started way back in February is when you got that information. We use that information to help us make a projection for the enrollment growth in these areas. So again, if we make no changes, the table at the top would be what we would project would be the enrollment for these schools over time. The lower table then reflects, if you take that map on the right or accept the recommendations that have been provided by staff, what the potential impact would be. Again, I need to be cautious here, caution, caution. This presumes that every single student that's recommended to move takes the new reassignment. And we know, and we'll discuss later today, there are always stability rules that we put into play to support families in having some continuity and stability. So not all families that are in the proposal will be made to change schools. Some will be allowed to stay on transfer status, and we'll talk about that as we get to the end. I will make a note that after publication, we noticed that the 916 that you see on the lower, the final column of this should read 924, which would adjust those percentages to 64 and 74. We'll make those adjustments and repost after our session today. I will pause now, and at the end of every one of these recommendations, I will tell you some specific reasons for the recommendation to help you reorient as to why we're making the recommendation. And so in this case, the recommendations to go into Woods Creek as well as Oak Grove are first to open a new school, Woods Creek Elementary School, to reduce the crowding at some capped and overcrowded schools. The capped schools are Apex Elementary and Oakview. The overcrowded school is Holly Springs Elementary, and it does have a significant number of trailers on its campus as well. And to better utilize the available capacity at Oak Grove Elementary. Slide 43 then is the first of our complementary recommendations. So with that elementary school recommendation and thinking about what we heard from families about cohort continuity and calendar alignment, we do recommend that the areas coming out of Oakview Elementary and Apex Elementary also be realigned to Lufkin Road Middle at the middle school level so they can have that K-8 calendar continuity as well as that cohort continuity aging forward. This will provide a little bit of relief to a capped school, Apex Friendship Middle, and to a crowded school, Apex Middle. The areas that are being recommended to be assigned to Oak Grove Elementary are already assigned to Lufkin Road Middle, so no recommendation for change is needed there. Separately, while we're here, in this general area where the circle is roughly is where the future Felton Grove High School will be located. So we have no high school recommendations in this area because we know we'll be coming to you with those next year, and we would not want to reassign these families twice. So on page 44, you'll see the projected result, that this would provide a little bit of relief for the crowded school of Apex Middle, a little bit of relief for the crowding at the capped school of Apex Friendship Middle, and it certainly would take advantage of the available capacity at Lufkin Road Middle. This recommendation is specifically being made to align the feeder pattern for the students in this area, as well as to reduce the crowding at Apex and Apex Friendship. And I'm going to pause because you may notice that even with these recommendations, both Oakview and Apex Friendship Middle have really not received sufficient relief for long term, and I'm going to let Glenn take the next text.
So as we have multiple avenues that we can deal with crowding, whether it's reassignment, calendar change, capping, we're going to need to have additional conversations about how to look forward in dealing with Apex Friendship Middle School's continued growth, as well as Oakview Elementary. So we just want to bring that to your attention now because we are talking about reassignment. We do not have any new schools opening in that particular area to deal with crowding, so reassignment will not be an option moving forward. So we just want to make you aware of that we will have public engagement, opportunities for families to discuss what our next steps would be.
I got a sneak of water. As we stay in this area, we have an additional recommendation related to Banks Road Elementary. For this particular map, the sort of reddish color represents the base attendance area for Banks Road, and the lighter blue area represents the base attendance area for Westlake Elementary. The black line that's sort of coming down the center of the screen represents Fayetteville Road. The yellow line that you see kind of towards the top of the screen represents the future I-540 corridor. And then the black line towards the bottom of the screen represents NC-42. So hopefully that helps you figure out where you are in the county. Banks Road is hitting sort of its upper limit of crowding this year, and it's projected to continue to grow over the next several years. And it will ultimately be impacted by the opening of Hilltop Needmore. However, that school will not open until 25-26. And when you see the crowding projections, we just don't feel like we can wait that long to make a first step. So similar to things we have done in the past, we're sort of doing a phase one approach. In advance of the opening of Hilltop Needmore, we're recommending taking the portion that's circled and highlighted there that's bisected a little bit by that 540 corridor and assigning it from Banks Road to Westlake Elementary. It's the same calendar, so that will be the same for families, and we'll talk about stability rules in a few moments. But this will provide some relief for Banks Road to get us that extra year that we need to get to the opening of Hilltop Needmore. It'll also take advantage of some available capacity at Westlake. And because of the location of this recommended area, they would not be further impacted by the opening of Hilltop. So we feel confident that this would then be a stable assignment for these families. As you can see on the next slide, the projected crowding for Banks Road, if we do nothing, is at about 127% going into next year because of some residential development in its current base attendance area. So with this recommendation, it would allow us to provide a little bit of relief to get us that extra year that we need to get to the opening of Hilltop Needmore. So this recommendation is specifically being made to reduce the crowding at Banks Road Elementary, as well as to better utilize the capacity at Westlake Elementary. And so that's the southern and southwestern areas. As I mentioned earlier, we've broken this up into 4 regions that will align with our virtual public information sessions so that it can help families figure out what's the best session for them to attend. So now we'll review the recommendations for the central, northern, and northeastern area. On slide 48, we'll start with a recommendation that's related to a current base assignment of Carpenter Elementary. The recommendation is to reassign this area to Combs and Olds Elementary to take the area and break it into 2 separate groups because of the density of the population in this area. To orient you, the black line that's sort of swooping towards the top of the screen is Hillsborough Street. The yellow line towards the left of the screen that's kind of on a bit of a curved angle is 440. The yellow line towards the bottom of your screen is I-40. So hopefully that helps you figure out kind of where you are in the county. The purple area represents the existing Combs attendance area, and the blue area represents the existing Olds Elementary base attendance area. So you can tell based on proximity, the recommendations are being made here to allow students to go to a school that is significantly closer to their homes. You'll see on slide 49 the crowding recommendations. So this would provide some relief to the overcrowded Carpenter Elementary School. It would take advantage of some proximity to both Combs and Olds. I do want to draw your attention to Olds Elementary. The crowding looks significant, but I'll remind you that the campus has a capacity of 220. So even the smallest number of students can make that percentage look really high really fast. In addition to operate correctly and have the right number of teachers and to be able to configure their courses and their class sections correctly, we've talked with the principal. This is a number that he feels he can sustain. Keep in mind, if you look at 26, 27, there is some aging out in the existing base attendance area for Olds as well, so this will help to preempt and allow the school to maintain a sort of continuous enrollment over time. This recommendation is specifically being made to reduce the crowding at Carpenter Elementary as well as to improve transportation efficiency. On slide 50, a similar complementary move to what you saw in the southern area. This would take this same attendance area and align its middle schools, so the students could also go to a local middle school. Right now, they're currently assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School, which complements that Carpenter assignment. And so in this area, we would recommend that the area that would be assigned to Olds be aligned with Merton, and the area that would be assigned to Combs be aligned with Centennial to create that cohort continuity for these students in this area. On slide 51, you'll see the potential impact on crowding at all of these schools. This recommendation is specifically being made to align the feeder pattern for the elementary change that's recommended to reduce crowding at Alston Ridge Middle School as well as to improve transportation efficiency. Slide 52 starts into an area that has historically been assigned to Leesville Elementary, Leesville Middle, and Leesville High School. To orient you in the map, the yellow line that's kind of to the right side of the screen is 440. The yellow line towards the bottom is I-40. The darker black line that sort of comes up the middle and then hangs a right is South Saunders. So that kind of gives you an orientation to where you are. The rectangular shape in the larger circle is the north end of it is very proximate to the St. Aug campus. So if that kind of helps you orient where you are. Because of the nature of what's happening here, we're going to do a Zoom slide in just a moment. But the recommendation is to take the top area and assign it to Joyner Elementary, and to take that rectangular shape and break it into 3 groups. Assign the northern portion of that area to Underwood Elementary, the middle section to Powell Elementary, and the lower section to Hunter Elementary. So let's look at the Zoom slide. It's a lot easier. So on the Zoom slide, this is the same recommendation, just zoomed in a little bit more so you can see a little bit better detail. What this will help you to see is that the portion in the top circle is along North Raleigh Boulevard. If you're familiar with the region, it's just north of the Food Lion complex that's there. The rectangular shape, as I mentioned, is very near St. Aug. In fact, our own Mary Phillips is in that top portion of the section. Our own Mary Phillips campus is there. The boundary on the east side of that block is Raleigh Boulevard. The boundary on the top side of that block is Glasscock Street. And as we get to the lower portion, it's just south of New Bern Avenue. And Pool Road kind of bisects that portion as well. You'll notice in this section, there's also a portion in the larger oval towards the south end of this that's actually in the blue color. That's technically a portion of the existing Southeast Raleigh Elementary base. However, as we drove the area and preparing our recommendations, we recognized that there's a single neighborhood there that exits onto East Davie Street. And that's not logical for transportation to go all the way up to East Davie Street, come into the one neighborhood, and then come all the way back down to Southeast Raleigh Elementary. So we are making a recommendation to align this with that lower portion into Hunter to create a nice contiguous transportation pattern for that community. To give you some boundaries on the green portion on the top, just to help you orient again, this top boundary that's being recommended to go to Underwood is Glasscock Street. The left or west boundary is North State Street. And then the southern boundary for that section would be Oakwood Avenue for the green section that would be recommended to join the Underwood base that you can see is already in existence to the right. The tan or brown color section in the middle, that would be recommended to go to Powell Elementary. The borders on the top are Oakwood Avenue. Again, on the east side is North Raleigh Boulevard. The southern is New Bern Avenue. And then the western edge would be Tarboro Street. And for the purple section that's being recommended to align with Hunter Elementary, the top boundary would be New Bern Avenue, and that pulls down, and you're kind of getting in that East Hargett Street area. Pool Road bisects it a little bit, and then of course Raleigh Boulevard would be that east boundary.
What's the existing school that is the big pink that's in the circle on the left?
Leesville Elementary.
That's Leesville. And where is, that's in a totally different area, right?
Correct.
Yep.
It's in the northwestern portion
Yep.
of the county.
Okay. Far, far away.
We're making this recommendation for several reasons. One, obviously, the distance of the students to the school, but there have been some changes in this particular area, and we're seeing some gentrification, and we're seeing some capacity gains at some of these schools as some of these neighborhoods are turning over. And so we do want to take advantage of that available capacity and allow these students to go to schools closer to home. You'll see on slide 54 all the schools that are impacted. You'll notice that some of these, as I mentioned earlier, are moving areas that don't have students, so you'll see no percentage change. But in other areas, it will bring a few students into the schools. You'll also notice that there's a note about Leesville Road Elementary being impacted by another assignment change. As you can imagine, this is a pretty significant reduction for Leesville Road Elementary, so we have a complementary recommendation later in the presentation to take advantage of those available seats in that area. This specific recommendation is being made for a more proximate school assignment for these students to improve transportation efficiency, as well as to better utilize some of the capacity at most of the impacted schools. The second slide 55 then is a complementary recommendation related to those elementary moves. And so it would be to align the feeder pattern for these students so that their cohort could come together and follow on into middle school and high school together. So we'll start on slide 55 and say that we're recommending that portions of this attendance area that were being recommended to go to Joyner and Underwood would be aligned to Martin in the middle. and that the areas that were recommended to go to Powell and Hunter Elementary would be aligned to Ligon Middle. Slide 55 then shows you the projected impact in terms of capacity at the schools. And again, this recommendation is being made specifically to align the feeder pattern to complement those elementary recommendations as well as to improve transportation efficiency. Slide 57 then is the final in this series. As I mentioned at the opening of this section, this area is currently assigned to Leesville Elementary, Leesville Middle, and Leesville High School. So this is the third sort of complementary recommendation to align the high schools for this area. And so the recommendation would be to go from Leesville High, and again, that area that was at Southeast Raleigh Elementary, to go to Broughton and Enloe High Schools. The light blue represents the Broughton attendance area, and the sort of pinkish area represents Enloe. The green represents Southeast Raleigh, sorry. Okay. And on slide 58, you can see the potential impact on the system. And again, this recommendation is being made to align feeder patterns as well as improve transportation efficiency. Take a moment. A little water.
Can't believe you got this far.
Well, remember I snuck one earlier when they couldn't talk. All right, and in this area, we have a few additional recommendations. On slide 59, what you're seeing is a recommendation to go from Durant Road Elementary to Partnership Elementary. The yellow line that's on the diagonal that kind of curves again is our 440. The black line is that extension of South Saunders that goes into US 1. The area that's sort of the road that's curving along the top of that colored block that's sort of I guess a dark teal color as well as the pink area, that is New Bern Avenue. And then the yellow line that you would see extending off to the east, that's I-87, or whatever number it is that you know it by. The area that's highlighted is a portion of the existing Durant Road Elementary base that is along New Bern Avenue that's off of Kelly Austin Drive. So as you're driving on New Bern Avenue and heading toward the Beltline, sometimes there's that one little side road that you might think is the on-ramp, and you go, whoops, not that one, and you go to the on-ramp. Well, that whoops, not that one is Kelly Austin Drive, and there is a housing complex in there that has a number of students. And so we are recommending assigning that area to adjoin Partnership Elementary, which will allow them to go to a more proximate school. You'll see here the impact. Similar to Olds Elementary, I do need to draw your attention, Partnership is a pretty small campus, so sometimes these changes look like they're much more significant than they are. Also, Partnership in that existing attendance area does have an apartment complex that is getting ready to come online, and we'll continue to monitor that and see if adjustments need to be made. You'll note here that Durant Road Elementary is impacted by another assignment change. As you can imagine, this would have an impact on Durant Road Elementary and reduce its enrollment, so we do have another complementary recommendation to use that available capacity. This particular assignment is being made to offer a more proximate school assignment for these students, as well as to improve transportation efficiency. Going on to slide 61, this is one of the complementary recommendations, so taking that same area and aligning it at the middle school level to Moore Square, which is where Partnership is aligned, and so assigning the students from Durant Road Middle to Moore Square Middle. And on slide 62, you can see the projected impact on the campuses. Again, this is being recommended to align the feeder pattern based on the elementary recommendation, as well as to improve transportation efficiency. And on slide 63, you heard me note that we had a complementary recommendation for Durant Road Elementary to help offset this reduction in students. The area that you see circled toward the bottom of the map on the left is currently assigned to Sanford Creek Elementary. So to orient you on this map, the dotted line on the top right sort of corner of the map represents the Franklin County, Wake County line. The yellow line that you see cutting through is actually now 540, so we've gone out a little bit more northeast in this area. And where you see the split, that's the 1 and 401 split. So the lower line is US 401 and the upper line is US 1, just to orient you to this area. The areas, because it is such a small area and we didn't zoom in, I do want to call out the area here are portions along Marthona Way and Cardinal Grove Road. That will help families who are listening to know what area we're looking at. You can see here the potential impact on relieving some crowding at Sanford Creek as well as supporting Durant Road. And you'll notice that this area does have some growth in it, and so that growth would then come over to Durant Road, which would support enrollment at Durant Road. So this recommendation is specifically being made to offer a more proximate school assignment for families, to improve transportation efficiency, to better utilize the available capacity at Durant Road Elementary, and to reduce crowding at Sanford Creek. When we get to slide 65, we're now going to look at the recommendations in the northwestern area. And here I will pause. This recommendation is a significant impact to an existing school's base attendance area. This is a bit of a bold recommendation that's a little bit different from things we've done in recent history, and so I want to slowly talk through this recommendation as it's potentially going to impact a number of families. The area that you see on the map on the left represents a combination of the existing base attendance area for Alston Ridge Elementary, which is the blue sort of boundary on that Durham-Chatham County line. The yellow, more rectangular shape that's in that circle toward the left represents the current Parkside Elementary base attendance area. Moving to the right of Chapel Hill Road, I guess I should orient you. Okay. So the diagonal line that's towards the top of the screen that's heading up is Glenwood Avenue, US 70. The other diagonal line that's kind of yellow highlighted, that's I-40. The area that looks almost like an H that's kind of embedded in the map, that's the airport. The larger blob that goes from sort of a hashed color to pink, most of that is Umstead Park. So if that kind of helps you figure out where you are in the northwest part of the county. The blue area that's just to the east of Chapel Hill Road is currently a portion of the existing Pleasant Grove attendance area, as is the majority of the airport, which, as you can imagine, does not generate very many students, as well as Umstead Park, which, again, as you can imagine, doesn't generate very many students. There are a few ranger stations. We do have rangers that send their students to Wake County schools, which we're very proud of. But the majority of the students in this attendance area are in the area that you see towards the top middle of the map, that's with that top circle, kind of has about of a point or an arrow shape. That's just north and sort of east of Glenwood Avenue or US 70. That area currently attends Pleasant Grove, and in this recommendation, we're recommending it be reassigned to Briar Creek Elementary. The area that's in the larger circle along the US 70 corridor, we're recommending be divided into two groups, and a portion go to Leesville Elementary. As we mentioned, this is a complementary recommendation to take advantage of the available capacity with the other move that's being recommended in the downtown area. And then the portion that's a little bit more south on that Glenwood Avenue strip that you'll see is more of a light blue color on the right map, we're recommending that join the York Elementary base attendance area.
The little yellow to the right, is that?
That's an existing portion of the Briar Creek attendance area, so for now, we're not recommending changing that. You'll also notice on this map, maybe, if you get your magnifying lens out, there's a teeny tiny little section that's sort of wrapped around a portion of Umstead Park's boundaries that currently has a route that goes from the Stow base into that neighborhood. And the only way to get out of that neighborhood would be to go through the Stow base attendance area to get somewhere else. So as we drove that area and noticed that, we recommended that we realign that to Stow Elementary, so there's a much better transportation flow for families in that area.
Is that like Ebenezer Church Road, that area?
South.
So the recommendation would be to take the area, as I mentioned, that is north and east of 70 or Glenwood, and assign that to Briar Creek, and to take those portions along the 70 corridor, the Glenwood Avenue corridor, and assign them to Leesville Elementary and York Elementary. So again, I'll pause. That would effectively take the largest majority of the attendance area of Pleasant Grove and assign it to these schools. This capacity is now available because of a couple of things. We've opened Barton Pond, and that has successfully relieved the crowding in this region, as well as the complementary recommendation earlier regarding Leesville Elementary. So the recommendation then would be to take the portions that are highlighted in the smaller circle on the west side of the map that are currently assigned to Alston Ridge Elementary and Parkside Elementary, and bring those entire neighborhoods and assign them to Pleasant Grove. And I say entire neighborhoods because we did get feedback about not breaking up neighborhoods, and so this would allow these entire neighborhoods to be able to come as a unit to this new school assignment. The change for those would be going from a multi-track year-round elementary school to a traditional elementary school, so we do recognize that could be a significant change. In this same area, we will be opening Parkside Middle, projected to open that next year, and then Morrisville High School, projected to open in 27-28. So at this time, we would not have complementary middle school or high school adjustments because we want to leave stability for these families while we're waiting for the opening of those schools. So a lot of explanation for this, but we recognize this is a significant change. I think I used the word bold earlier. This is not necessarily anything that was on a particular family's radar, so we're very cognizant of that, and we've made this our first virtual public information session, and we've had conversations with principals to help them, help their families understand these impacts. So we'll talk more about that as we get farther in, but I do want to make sure that we recognize, we own and understand that this may be a challenging recommendation for families to review. On page 67, you see the potential impacts, and I do need to, again, looking at that lower table, remind everyone, this assumes that every single student that is impacted takes the new assignment, and with our stability rules, we know that that generally doesn't happen, so we will have a much more gradual adjustment to these changes. However, it does provide significant relief to Alston Ridge Elementary over time. I don't think we're feeling confident enough that we could take the cap off in this first year, but we certainly will be monitoring that to be able to do that in the future. The same goes for Parkside Elementary, one of our cap schools. Both of those have continued growth in their remaining base attendance areas, so we do need to be careful to monitor those over time. As I mentioned, the Stow Elementary impact, again, was for transportation efficiency. So to summarize, the specific reasons for making this recommendation are to better utilize the available capacity at Briar Creek Elementary, Leesville Road Elementary, and York Elementary. To improve transportation efficiency for the areas that are along the US 70 Glenwood corridor, because the assignment will put them at a more proximate school. To align feeder patterns, the areas along the US 70 corridor are already assigned to either Leesville Middle and Leesville High School, or Leesville Road Middle and Leesville Road High School, or Oberlin Middle and Broughton High School. So this would align those feeder patterns for those families that are already in existence at the middle school and high school level. This would allow us to better utilize Pleasant Grove Elementary to relieve crowding at the capped schools of Alston Ridge Elementary and Parkside Elementary, as well as continue to reduce crowding at both of those capped schools. As we move into the southeastern area, this is our fourth region that we'll talk through. So we're almost there. On slide 69, you'll see a recommendation related to Bryan Road Elementary. If you'll recall, we did come to you last year with a recommendation to relieve crowding at Bryan Road by taking a portion of its attendance area and assigning it to Aversboro. You supported that, we approved that, and it wasn't enough. The growth in this particular base attendance area, particularly near and around the school, is tremendous. And we need to provide some relief in advance of the opening of Hilltop Needmore. We had hoped to wait for the section that's in the lower area until the opening of Hilltop Needmore, but we really don't feel that that's a sustainable option for us in this region. So this recommendation includes three parts. In the orangish color represents the current Bryan Road attendance area in the map on the left. Those looks blue to me from here, maybe purple on a screen area that's kind of a bit of a column going in this direction represents the Aversboro Elementary base attendance area. The sort of maroonish purple rectangular shape represents the Rand Road Elementary base, and then that linear sort of light blue one on the western edge of all of this represents the Vance Road Elementary base. So the recommendation would be to take the top portion, and if you're familiar with this area, it's along New Bethel Church Road. There's an existing section of that New Bethel Church Road that's already assigned to Aversboro Elementary, so this would extend it down. In this area, it would be a combination of existing students and undeveloped or not yet built out land. So it'd be a combination of both in that particular area. The remaining attendance area has so much projected growth coming over the next 10 years that it'll backfill within probably about 6 years. The area that you see on the more southern portion of the screen, and again, to orient you, I probably should have done that first. The line on the bottom right represents the Wake County, Johnston County line. The yellow sort of cluster that you see at the right of the screen represents where 540 and 40 are going to eventually intersect. So if that kind of helps to put you where you are on the map. And then the area that's in the southern portion, there's a creek called Little Creek that separates those two regions. So the portion that is north and east of the creek, we're recommending be assigned to Rand Road, and the portion that is south and west of the creek, we're recommending be assigned to Bates. On this screen, page 70, you can see the potential impact on crowding. Again, I have to caution, this would presume that every single student that is impacted would take the assignment on the first year. And with our stability rules, we know it won't be quite this drastic. It'll be much more gradual. You'll notice that Vance is still looking to be projected to be crowded just to the west of it. Hilltop Needmore will be opening up in 25-26, so any adjustments that need to be made, we can make at that time. This recommendation is specifically being made to reduce the crowding at Bryan Road Elementary, to allow sufficient room for growth in the remaining base at Bryan Road Elementary, as well as to better utilize the available capacity at both Aversboro and Rainey. We haven't specifically called it out, but the recommendations here and maybe in the Banks area are also our preventative efforts to try assignment changes first and not need to implement a cap for these campuses. Okay, we're almost to the end. We're getting there. All right, on page 71, before we get to the good stuff, the stability rules and how do we engage and ask our questions, we do want to make sure we review some recommendations related to calendar application changes. As we've been doing over the last several years, we've been trying to reduce the impact on transportation with these particular types of application schools, and we're continuing that effort with the recommendations that you'll see today. So how to read this slide. Here we are on slide 72. The column on the left represents if I were to type my address into our tool and try to figure out what my base attendance school is, it would tell me it is this. So if I type in my address and it tells me that it's Adams Elementary, then that's my base school where I have guaranteed assignment. The next thing that I can do is go over and look at my application school list, and I'll see all my magnet application options, as well as, in some cases, a calendar application option, where we have over the last several years been providing school district transportation to these choices. So in this case, those families that type in their address and have Adams as a base might see Reedy Creek Elementary as a traditional calendar application school that comes with school district transportation. The way you read the recommendation then as you get into the far column is that as staff, at this point, we're recommending that we would not have that as a traditional calendar application option for this area moving forward. What that would mean for families is, we'll go over stability rules. They would have the ability to request to stay at their school. We would just no longer provide transportation. Again, these are mostly, if not all, being recommended to help lessen that impact on our transportation department. Now, there's some asterisks on the screen. So we want to talk through those. In the column on the right, if we look at the second one on this particular list where it says, I'm based at Alston Ridge Elementary, a CAP school, and I concurrently see Green Hope Elementary, a traditional calendar school, and Hortons Creek Elementary, a traditional calendar CAP school, as an option. We want to recommend that we reduce this to just Green Hope. We put the asterisk because if you don't currently see Green Hope, we're not going to add it, but if you currently see Green Hope Elementary as a choice, we'll continue that because as a district that is supporting us in relieving crowding at this CAP school. The Hortons Creek column that you see in the middle with the two asterisks, our current recommendation from staff would be to allow the existing families that are already there to keep their transportation, because in the event that they need transportation, there's no room for them at Alston Ridge and they're already at Hortons Creek, and we could allow that to slowly, gradually age forward. The recommendation is being made for a couple of reasons. One, to gradually impact those enrollment changes, but also to help us reduce that overall impact long term. What you may not know is we hear from families quite regularly in my office, hey, why is this CAP school listed as an application option if there's no chance I can get a seat? And so we're trying to address both ends. We want to stop giving that false choice to families. We want to stop adding transportation to the network for those. But we also want to make sure that we allow those families that are already there to kind of ride that out with us until we can reduce that pressure. So again, we're making these recommendations to sometimes allow for the gradual enrollment change as well as to help with transportation efficiency. I'll go ahead and slide on to the next slide so you can see the additional recommendations being made at the elementary level. And while you're reviewing this, I'll remind you that just like we said last year, it's not that we're saying families can no longer ask for a different calendar. We're simply saying that in fewer and fewer cases will we be able to provide district transportation to those. So you certainly could participate in the magnet application period and ask for maybe a traditional calendar school through that route. We know that you want the magnet programming, but many of our magnet schools are on a traditional calendar. Or during the transfer period, you could certainly explain your hardship reasons for wanting a change in calendar. And if we can honor that, that's fine. We're just not going to be able to commit to transportation in all these cases. That way we can focus on providing transportation to our base schools and to our magnet schools. And again, all of this is posted online, so if I'm going a little too fast for those of you at home, you're welcome to pull this up and look at them at your leisure. On 73, then you'll see a similar set of recommendations at the middle school level. Again, if the school on the left is the base school, you potentially could see the calendar application school. I'm sorry, I did advance, 74. You'll see the middle school application choices that have that opposite calendar, and the final column on the right would be the staff's recommendation for where we should leave this. Should we reduce it to 1? Should we reduce it to none that come with transportation? So in most cases, we're really trying to reduce that burden on transportation. As you can see, we have some schools that have as many as 5 different options based on where you live in that base attendance area, and so this would reduce that impact. For our families, this is probably the most important section. How am I personally impacted? I do want to pause and always say that moving forward, stability transfers would be without district transportation, so we do want to be clear about that on the onset. With our current situation, we just cannot provide continued transportation with stability transfers. So these all would be without transportation. Much like I said last year, these are rules specific to this plan, based on what we know today, the numbers on the ground today, and what we're seeing going into the 24-25 school year. But more importantly, I hope families and board members will see that the recommendations we're making this year do incorporate feedback we've received from our families. Concepts like being able to start where I finish. Concepts like being able to have cohort continuity and keeping our students together. And then also from an operational standpoint, giving our schools and our principals and our staff a more gradual entry into the change so that it doesn't have such significant impacts on staffing and teacher counts. All of that being said, here's what we care about. So on page 76, you'll see the recommendations for the new Woods Creek Elementary. So with these recommendations, I hope you'll notice there's an expansion. Historically, with the new school, we would make a recommendation to only allow the rising 5th grade students to stay at their current school, and that if they had siblings, they'd only be allowed to stay for the 1 year that their 5th grade student is there. With the level of growth that is projected in this particular base attendance area, we feel pretty confident that if families rising into 4th and 5th grade would like to stay at their current school, we can accommodate that and still have sufficient students at Woods Creek Elementary as those subdivisions build out. In addition, listening to what our families have been telling us about keeping our families together and being able to stay where we start. If your family is already there, if you have an eligible 4th or 5th grade sibling that can stay, then those younger siblings could also join and stay with you at the school as well. So this is a slight expansion of our historic stability rules for new schools. It's a new space. I know some people are going to pause and be like, "Ooh, we're going to have enough students at the new school," but we do feel confident with the growth projections in the area that this would be sustainable and still allow us to open the school. Not full, because we don't want it to be full, because it'll be full in a couple of years, but to fill it up with a decent number of students so that as that growth develops, we can sustain that growth in the coming years. Similarly, as I paused and mentioned earlier, because of the recommendations we're making related to Pleasant Grove Elementary, this is a significant and substantial change. We do need to use these similar type rules as if it were a new school to ensure that there's sufficient students at Pleasant Grove as well as sufficient capacity to hold on to the students that are being recommended to be reassigned. So for the students that are recommended to be reassigned from Pleasant Grove into Briar Creek, Leesville Road, or York Elementary, as well as the students that are being recommended to come from Alston Ridge or Parkside Elementary into Pleasant Grove, we're recommending those same rules that we did for Woods Creek. That the rising 4th and 5th grade students would be eligible to stay where they are if they'd like, provide their own transportation, and if they have siblings that they'd like to bring with them, they can do that. And then any student who doesn't meet these eligibility requirements would be reassigned to the new school. I will say specific to the Pleasant Grove area, that's not necessarily related to stability. We do recognize that with this potential calendar change from multi-track to traditional, if families take that reassignment, they may want a traditional middle school, and we can certainly support those applications to West Cary. On page 78, then you'll see for the remainder. So if it's not specifically related to the opening of Woods Creek, if it's not specifically related to the adjustments that we're recommending for Pleasant Grove, the remaining students that are impacted by the plan, we would offer those same generous rules that we offered last year. That if they ask for the stability transfer during the stability window, they would be eligible to remain without district transportation through the terminal grade of that school. And if they have a rising kindergarten, 6th or 9th grade sibling that they'd like to join them on that campus, they could do that as well. I will take a moment to say that we will give you more specific details about timelines and processes when we come back for draft 2. But right now, we just want to have everybody think about and sort of reflect on these recommendations before we get too much further down the road. You'll notice also that I have a note at the bottom that says they need to be requested during the stability window. We'll reiterate this in October as well as in November. Because of the nature of the types of moves we're talking about, we need to know if you want that stability transfer when we open that window this fall. Our goal is to make sure families have all of those decisions and know all of those, sort of approved stability transfers before we go into the winter break. That also then helps us start our planning, particularly for magnet schools and for allotments and for teacher hiring and teacher staffing purposes. So if we have late stability requests that come outside of the window, we'll handle those case by case. And I will say that this would include the calendar application changes as well. So it's all encompassing of base recommendations as well as calendar application changes. One of my favorite slides, in case you've forgotten, go to our website. That's where all of your questions can be answered, or at least you can ask them as well. So please encourage families, if they approach you, to visit our website. More importantly, to put their thoughts and comments in the thought exchange. An individual email is lovely, but then it doesn't get into the group where everybody can see it. What we really like about the Thought Exchange is not only that it's a one-stop shop to be able to collect all of those comments, questions, thoughts, and ideas, but it also provides an anonymous outlet for families so that they can make sure that they're feeling safe in making the comments that they make. As we go on to slide 80 and talk about our timeline and next steps, we'll start with your timeline as a board. So as a board, just as a reminder, it's taken us a while to get here. We had our public engagement in the spring, and we presented some information to you in May about our start kickoff to the process. We came back to you in June and shared with you some updates on what we learned from our public engagement in the spring. We're here today sharing with you our initial set of recommendations, as well as kicking off our public engagement series. We'll come back to you on October 17th with any recommended adjustments in draft 2, as well as a full review of what we've heard from the public through our public engagement activities. On November 8th, you have scheduled to have your public hearing, a special called session just to hear public feedback regarding the plan. And then on November 21st, you're currently scheduled to review and approve the plan at this board meeting. Now I'm going to talk for a little while here because I want to be sure everybody knows how to get engaged. So some things we're going to continue doing this year that worked well for us last year. One, the website. So obviously I've shared that multiple times. We all know that that's where we should go to find information. As a reminder, our address lookup tool is there, which is where you can type in your address and see whether or not you've been impacted. Our Thought Exchange link is there. That's the public comment tool. And all of the details about the plan, not only this PowerPoint, but also a typed out version of the recommendations so you can understand. It basically repeats what I said about why we're making the recommendations. In addition, there are links to some of our other curated resources related to forecasting and prior planning processes so families can see that continuum in our planning process. In addition, as was already done today, we're starting to send out emails to the entire community that we have. I think it's a little over 360,000 individual email addresses so that families can get the information that we're presenting today and remind them to participate. We will continue to send weekly messages throughout the planning process, letting them know where we are and reminding them to engage in the process. We are continuing this year our virtual public information sessions. We had great success not only in live attendance, but also in watching of the recordings. So we're going to continue that because it allows families to join from wherever they are, whenever they are. I believe last year we even had a board member join us from overseas at one of our sessions. Because it is virtual, it doesn't require that you be physically in one location. We have live Q&As during those sessions as well, and I think that's what's really important about those if you can physically attend and join us when those are happening. We will continue to record those and post those on our website so families have access to those as soon as they're possibly ready. And we will continue to monitor the thought exchange as well as the questions that we get during our public engagement activities to update the frequently asked questions section of our website and prepare updates and revisions for you for draft 2. New this year, in response to questions that we've had about how do we continue to engage our families and think differently, we've created a mini toolkit for our principals that has a flyer that's in both English and Spanish that they can print out and put into backpacks for families to let them know that, hey, our school's impacted, you really should get engaged. In addition, they can use those digitally with their weekly messages from the principal's desk. What we've learned on our side is that sometimes the community messages don't get opened or read, but the principal's messages almost always do. So we're going to try to do that two-pronged approach to help our principals reach our families. Another thing that we're doing new is that we've added on the 4th session, you'll notice that the title says Southeastern and General Overview. It's a catch-all. So if someone misses session 20 on the 26th or 28th or the 4th, the 5th will be a great place to come and ask those live questions because we intentionally have carved out time to go over any portion of the plan that anybody would like to discuss. So that's a new feature this year. In addition, we're partnering with the Division or the Office of Equity Affairs to get on the agenda for some upcoming community leadership series. So Dr. Tavis and I have just been emailing back and forth to try to get on that agenda so we can get outreach that way. And then we're also different this year since we already know a lot of the questions families are asking. If you go to the frequently asked section of our website, there are already some questions pre-populated based on what we're pretty sure families would want to know, but we'll continue to update that as we go along. With that, I'll remind everybody of my favorite website, and I'm subject to your questions.
All right, that is a lot of information to absorb. Susan, you almost lost your voice once, but you rallied. And I think you're in the single digits for water sips, if anybody was.
That's my third.
keeping track. Yeah. So that's a lot, and just as a reminder for board members, you know, getting families to engage on the thought exchange is key. I know as much as we get a lot of emails on this, making sure we direct them because this is in staff's hands as we go into draft 2, and the thought exchange and those virtual information sessions will help them in draft 2. So while it's important that we see that feedback, everyone can see it if they post it on the thought exchange. Not everyone can see our emails unless there's unless it goes through Lisa's office. And so with that, I know there are a lot of initial questions and high-level questions, so we'll open it up. Sam?
Just a couple of things you kept referencing. You kept referencing that the percentages we were seeing were if everybody went. Historically, what kind of percentages use the stability rule and don't?
So historically, it really depends on school by school. Right? So if the assignment is to a significantly closer school, we do find that a larger percentage of families will probably accept the new assignment because they're excited to be going to a school that's closer to home. We also find sometimes that families that are assigned to a brand new school out of maybe a little bit older school, like really excited about that, and so not use the stability transfer. So really it is case by case.
Okay. And the only other question I had, you mentioned the capped and uncapped schools. As part of the process at the end of this, do we wait until February to do capping and uncapping, or do we do it simultaneously?
Yes, and I'll look to my partner, Marcella Rory, who's in the audience. Once we know what the approved plan is, then we can have a better understanding of what the impact will be for crowding going into the 24-25 school year. So around February? January.
Okay.
Around January, we'll come to the facilities committee meeting with her work to help us understand the impacts on the forecast and the impacts on crowding of schools to start setting up. Should we continue caps or not? Should we adjust overflow schools or not?
All right, that's it. Thank you so much.
Other questions? Wayne? Dr. Green?
So let me get that clear in terms of the calendar application changes for the various schools. So the proposal on many of the elementary schools would be that they would use those calendar options Is that clear? Is that right?
And so what we mean to say is that district transportation would no longer be provided to these options. But if families still want to ask for them for the calendar and it works with their family's needs and they can provide transportation, we will certainly will do what we can to support families in that way.
It would not have the transportation.
Right, so when they type in their address and see it, they would no longer see it as a choice with transportation. It would be more of a traditional transfer request.
Ms. Coffin?
Well, first, thank you. That was a mouthful, right? And I appreciate the mindfulness of paying attention to the growth that's coming to the area. We all know that Wake County is growing in leaps and bounds, so putting families all over the place has always kind of been a thing. So I think that families will appreciate the fact that we kind of rounded things out a little, and hopefully that alleviates transportation a little bit. Can you walk us through the process of how you get the numbers with all this crazy growth that's coming? Like, how does it work out? What's the whole process?
For the
I hear dribs and bats.
Right.
So I want to just understand the whole thing.
So the easiest way to explain it is that it starts off with the work of Ms. Rory's office, where they do 10-year projections on an annual. Why don't you start that part?
We actually meet with every municipality to determine what our short-term residential and long-term residential growth projections are, 7 years, and then 20 years, and then anybody has to kick the tires for something else way out in the future before they even purchase property. We use that information and we develop a forecast, which typically the Office of Long-Range Planning would bring to the board at the first facilities committee meeting in February. So it's around February 14th of this upcoming year. So there's a lot of information that's baked into that. We look at the trends, what's going on around the country. We look at the in-migration and also the number of people that are basically just simply moving around in the county. So there's a lot of detail that we use and bake into that actual forecast. And again, I think I heard somebody say something about crystal ball earlier to give kind of a, this is what has typically occurred, this is what we're forecasting for the future, and these are the numbers that we're expecting in these general areas.
And so once we get that information, we try as best we can to apply that to the base assignment areas that correlate with those growth areas to make a projection for what that impact would have on the enrollment for an individual school. Again, it's a projection. They're not terribly far off usually. And then the other thing we do is monitor what we know about, for example, magnet schools, how many application students are there. For some of our existing application schools at the calendar level, how many application students are there. And we work those together to sort of develop this really complex formula to help us get an idea of how crowded these schools might be if the capacities don't change.
And then once we get our projection, our forecast, and we go through all of this, does this now go back to all those municipalities to say, hey, look, this is what we have and this is what we're doing, so you understand our school standpoint?
We share that information with them as part of the presentation that we do in February, but we don't go back and have a municipality by municipality meeting with them until we have the next generation of information. We are actually in that process right now and scheduling the meetings with all the municipal planners at this point. We also attend, well, it used to be a monthly, but now it's almost like a bi-monthly municipal planners meeting. So we also have the option of getting on that agenda and basically giving general information to that group of people that they're able to share with their individual municipalities.
I'll say that over my 7 years here, the level of communication between municipal planners and Marcella's office has grown leaps and bounds. Because it was, I would say, non-existent at one point, or seemingly non-existent. Yeah. Ms. Waters?
Well, thank you so much for this work. I really feel that you have honored the requests that we had around making sure that we were mindful of residents of Southeast Raleigh who had a commute that was very long, and the work that you have done to bring both elementary middle and high school students back is very much appreciated. I had to pause and process the work that has gone into that. So very grateful. And I don't know how many parents I have heard from in Southeast Raleigh say, why does my child go so far when I pass 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 different schools that are much more proximate? And so feeling that they've been heard is really important. And so I really value this work. And I know there are other areas that we're going to address in the future, but this is really, really important to the community to demonstrate that their voices have been heard and honored in this process. So thank you. I have a question on page 57. As I get into the weeds a little bit. So on the slide on the left, which is the current assignment for Southeast Raleigh, can you help me understand, and I know you talked about wanting the cohorts to stay together based upon the elementary and middle. Can you help me understand Southeast Raleigh's role in this? Because Southeast Raleigh is an amazing school, and I want to make sure that we're not impacting them in a way that we don't need to talk about.
This is that portion, if you'll recall, back on the elementary slides. I'm going to take you back a few slides to that zoomed picture. You see that slight light blue area that's just below the larger rectangle? That's the northernmost portion of Southeast Raleigh Elementary. That particular area has an exit that only goes on to East Davie Street, and it's a singular neighborhood. And so that's that same area across all 3 maps.
Okay.
So if we're going to bring them into Hunter, we should align them to Ligon, and we should align them to Enloe. That way the students can grow as a cohort together and not be split across 3 different feeder patterns that really aren't contiguous. Because the Hunter, Ligon, Enloe path is pretty consistent for the magnet students as well as the base students in that area.
Okay, I just wanted to.
It's just because of that little East Davie Street piece. If you're familiar with Roberts Park, it's in that area.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to get more
So
clarification.
we don't foresee this having any significant impact on any of those 3 schools. It's really a transportation efficiency.
I think we all got a little like, we saw Southeast Raleigh.
And keep in mind, the Old Town subdivision has already started recording addresses and started selling homes, and that is part of the Southeast Raleigh base. So we're excited for the growth that's
And
coming.
the other 2 subdivisions that are dirt now, but turned
Yes.
over, that will also be Southeast,
Yes.
that are literally in my backyard, that'll be Southeast Raleigh High as well. Like houses and
Yes.
houses.
One more question. This is changing a little bit of topic, but jumping to slide 72, the slides about the calendar application changes, particularly for those that are where the base is year-round, and then they had a traditional calendar application that has gone away. Have you done any work to kind of, I don't know, look at this from the perspective of families that we hear from sometimes during the transfer appeal process, that it's difficult for them to find childcare? So just wondered if you had maybe looked at this from a lens of maybe the Title I schools, maybe keeping those traditional calendar options with transportation. I know I hate to bring that up, but I feel like it's important to at least have the conversation, because we do hear from a lot of families about the difficulty of finding childcare when they are on the year-round schedule, and then it would be, they still have the option for the transfer, but then they'd be kind of in another situation where they may not have the transportation on their own. So just wanted to really have dialogue around what that can look like, especially for any of our schools that may be Title I, that have, more unique needs.
We've started and will continue to work with agencies to provide after-school, before care, track-out care. Specifically, I know we've been in contact already with the YMCA. So we are looking at expanding alternative options for families to support them.
Your Roxy Cash going intercession in my ear. All right, Lynn, and then back to Cheryl, and then Terry. I'm sorry, Ms. Waters, did you have more questions?
Just
Yes.
one, but I can
Yeah, no,
circle
no,
back.
go ahead.
And just, well, this is more of a comment, and so I really appreciate the fact that you are working with the schools to send home information. And I think the Thought Exchange is a really powerful tool, but I do worry about some of our families that may not be as attuned to technology as some of the other families, particularly as we think about, we do have a number of grandparents who are parenting children, and there may be technology disconnect. And so whatever we can do to help ensure that even if someone can't do the thought exchange, that their voice is still heard. And I know it's harder to do, but I just wanted to really just give that feedback, appreciation that you're sending things home through the base school, but just wanted to give voice around that as well. So thank you.
And if I could just follow on, one thing that we maybe didn't make clear, they're all mobile friendly. And we even have a QR code, so as long as a person has a cell phone, they'll be able to participate. So it does not require a laptop or a computer or an iPad or anything like that to participate in the thought exchange. They can do it straight from their phone. And in any language that they want. I don't know that I've shared that. We've had families do it in Russian, and in addition to our traditional languages. So it's good to know that they can select their language of choice and they can do everything right there on their phone.
Lynn, back to Cheryl real quick, and then President, I think, Monica.
So slide 43, can you talk about the two small blue sections that straddle the bottom of the circle and they remain in the second?
Oh, sure. This is the Lufkin Middle area.
Right.
There's quite a bit of the Holly Springs Elementary base that's already assigned to Lufkin Road Middle, and so this just retains that portion of the Holly Springs Elementary that's been consistently going to Lufkin Road Middle and leaves them assigned there. So at this point, we're not recommending changing that assignment, as there is calendar alignment for those families.
Okay.
And you'll see that there's a portion up here that's also existing Holly Springs Elementary as well, so it allows for those families right now to keep that calendar continuity. But as Glenn mentioned, with a new high school opening in that area and some other factors, over time, we may make some other recommendations, but for now, we wanted to provide stability for those families and not change that assignment.
Great. And then my other question, I don't expect an answer today, but I think we need to understand what the move, getting kids back to Southeast Raleigh, what that's going to mean for the schools that are sending and receiving. And that's not a statement of support or opposition. I just think we need to understand what impact that's going to have on the sending and receiving schools.
And I can share that we've had early conversations with area superintendents and principals specifically to that, to make sure that there's a lot of support in place for those.
Ms. Caulfield, and then we'll
So back to slide 72, just as an example.
Close your eyes, close your eyes.
So the asterisks, I just wonder when people are looking at it, and I may be overthinking it, but having the words no transportation versus, because the Green Hope has a star, right? But it's in both columns. Will they get transportation, or is that a
Yes.
possibility?
Yes. Okay, so I'm glad for that clarifying question. So if we look at the Alston Ridge Road, this particular base attendance area is a capped base attendance area. And there are families that have a calendar application with transportation to Green Hope. Our recommendation right now is to maintain that because it's helping us relieve crowding at that CAP school. However, if you look at the Carver Forestville example, Carver is a modified calendar, Forestville is a traditional calendar. So in this case, we would recommend there wouldn't be any choice that comes with transportation. Rather, families could ask for a transfer and provide their own transportation to what works for their family. So that's the distinction. So if you do see a school name in the far right column, it does mean we do recommend leaving that one of the two choices available with transportation. The asterisk is just to denote that, for example, with Alston Ridge, if there's an area that doesn't see Green Hope today as a choice, we're not going to add it to them. We're just going to maintain what we already have from a stability perspective.
So it's allowed, but it's not the first option? Is that what you mean?
It's not their, I'm sorry, no, I'm not trying to understand.
So like Richmond Creek on the last one, Wake Forest, it's allowed, but you would normally just tell them to go to Richmond Creek? Is that what you're saying?
what we're saying is in Heritage, it's possible that when I type in my address, I actually see both of these choices,
Okay.
which creates an interesting conundrum for transportation, because not only are they routing buses to the base school, they're routing some to the traditional school of Richland and some to the traditional school of Wake Forest. We're recommending reducing that to a single option to improve transportation efficiency, while still allowing for a choice, because we know that there is some crowding. Well, it's aging out a little bit, but we wanted to make sure we didn't have a significant impact on either school, and to allow that to stay for now for stability purposes. So if we keep a name in the far right column, that means we're providing that stability for families.
Okay.
But they can keep doing what they're
So
doing.
they still get transportation?
Yes.
Okay, because I saw the 2 asterisks that said existing students
Right.
retain transportation, so I was
Yeah.
wondering.
It was so hard to figure out how to display this on the
I
screen.
know.
And we will continue to answer these questions individually for families as well, especially if we put them in the thought exchange. But I can go ahead and use some of these examples today, and we'll work to get some updated FAQs that kind of give a specific example. Because you're right, it's hard to figure out how to display all this.
Right, we get a lot of explanation, but
Yes.
I'm not sure that the families
Yes,
at first glance
agreed.
will understand. They may think we don't have.
Yes, agreed. Thank you for that, Ms.
Haggerty and then Ms. Johnson Hustler.
So there's a lot here.
You're welcome. It took a year to build. I feel
But-
like it should be substantial.
But, you know, I see a lot of these changes are, in particular, at schools that have had some real transportation problems. You know, Pleasant Grove Elementary is a school in my area. It's a great school, but because it's pulling from such a wide assignment area, they've had a lot of difficulty getting kids to school on time with the current situation. And so hopefully by making this a more compact area, we'll reduce that problem. It's not going to help this year, but it should help in coming years. Couple questions. I see these changes are projected to pull the enrollments down at Austin Ridge Elementary, at Parkside Elementary, currently 2 CAP schools. And I know you said that won't automatically pull the cap down, but if you hit those projection numbers, would you be able to call back students that were overflowed? And see, I think that's important because right now the Parkside overflow is all the way over at Adams, right? Which, and again, we're providing transportation for those overflow students that are passing by all those other schools. So taking some kids that could be closer, and I think Austin Ridge, doesn't Austin Ridge overflow to
To Briar Creek.
Briar Creek okay. So again, you're keeping them closer to home. So some families do get moved in the assignment plan, but I think you're probably keeping it, especially in that area, more neighborhoods closer to the actual school in the neighborhood. Oh, one quick question.
I was like, is that it?
I have more, but I know we don't have a lot of time. I did want to ask.
staffing update still.
I did want to ask quickly, the middle school alignments for those year-round elementaries that are moving to traditional school, the neighborhoods in the Kitts Creek area and in the Parkside area, where will they still be assigned to Austin Ridge Middle School?
Thank you for bringing that up again. I tried to hit it in the presentation. Because this is an area where Parkside Middle is proposed to be open in 25, 26, and then Morrisville High School is projected to open in 27, 28. For stability purposes, we wouldn't recommend any middle school or high school adjustments in this area until such a time as those schools open, and then we'll make those recommendations. In the interim, if the families in this area would like a traditional calendar middle school, we certainly can accommodate that request at West Cary Middle.
Okay. All right. Or magnet options.
Or magnet options, right, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes.
That's all.
Ms. Johnson Hustler.
I just have one clarifying question, because you did mention it, and that's on the change from Banks to Westlake. And you noted that it was, I'm sorry, I'll tell you it.
Close your eyes, close your eyes, close your eyes.
45, 46. So I
Can you tell I know my presentation?
appreciate, yes, you did, the change to make it contiguous, but my question is, you noted that it was only phase 1 because we will have Hilltop Newbor opening. So I want to clarify for my families here that phase 2 would not require them to be moving.
No, correct. Yes, thank you for that clarification. If you hear me use the term phase 1, it means we're getting ahead of the opening of a new school with a change we would have made anyway, that we can then leave and have as a stable assignment. Yes, thank you for that clarification. It just means that Banks Road will be impacted yet again, at least one more time, when we do open up Hilltop Eatmore. So the Banks Road families that are in the remaining portion do want to keep paying attention to our public engagement as we go into next year's plan. But this area would be a one and leave alone.
Perfect, thank you. And I want to echo Ms. Waters' sentiments of, yes, my 10-year tirade on more proximate schools for our families in Southeast Raleigh. I know this was not easy. I know it's taken a lot of work to maintain not just our 4 pillars, but also our commitment to diverse and equitable schools. So I know this was not easy, and I appreciate all the work that your entire team goes into this. And I can also hear former board members screaming in my ear, not very loud. But I appreciate the effort, because I do know that this was not my work. So thank you.
I'd like to go back to page 39.
Close your eyes.
40. Yep. So in looking at the recommendation for Woods Creek and having it multi-track, and maybe I should have said page 42, and seeing the percentage of it opening at around 64%, I think was what you said after
Yes, after the
the adjustment to 924 students. I'm imagining that we're looking at a 3-track opening like we did with Herbert Akins, rather than trying to supplement 4 tracks.
So that all depends on how many students actually attend.
Okay.
Students, provide the stability, use the stability rules. Certainly an option we would consider that.
Okay.
We'll right-size the track configuration to the population that'll come that first year.
And just because I know that many of our families like to plan ahead, for those families that think they might be in those new schools that are coming, that are weirdly mostly in my, well, they're all in mine and Monica's district, but, yes. But for, thank you. Just to look for the, oh, I guess there's Parkside. Sorry, Chris. I hope that's not foreshadowing anything. But just look out in the spring for those focus groups to be available again. And I think getting that proactive feedback from families is so important. And I just want to thank you and your team for taking the time and effort to do that and to listen and to have those focus groups. Because changing schools is never easy. Being alerted to this assignment plan is never easy. But knowing that folks are listening before, during, and even after this process is helpful. Although I will say, if you're in the middle of that process, it may not feel that way. But being able to do that, and I just want to say thank you. And we will see more of you. But we are going to move to our staffing update with 15 minutes left in our work session.
You're welcome, IJ. Remember to return this to.
Yes, ma'am. Public session at 9:26.
All right, Dr. Matillo, well, Miss Allen is very kindly pulling this up for us. You are welcome to get started, seeing as we have only 15 minutes,
Yes, we'll do.
and we will follow along.
I have fewer slides than this podium shared, so we should be able to go through it a little quicker, and I will try to also make my talking points.
But also
a
your
little-
staff, like, all cute, like, they like.
I know.
I mean, like
The beauty
magic.
of live streaming, you can follow it, and you're right on cue, so.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so thank you to Jason Kennedy and Sally Reynolds for joining me. Their teams are charged with the recruiting and final hiring processes. And when I say Jason's recruiting team, I mean Jason and another half a person. So I appreciate everything in particular that our recruitment team does. And we're here to provide you with a staffing update today. We'll go over some of our hiring numbers, some of the trends that we've seen, as well as some of our ongoing recruitment efforts. So starting with this slide here on vacancy reporting, this slide illustrates how where we are in terms of vacant positions, and right now we're in a pretty solid place. You'll see that we have 98% of our teaching position staffed, as well as 95% of our IA position staffed, and this is good news. You're not going to see me celebrate a whole lot because this also means that there are schools that still do have vacancies, but this is progress from where we were last year. We have 91 fewer teaching openings than we did this time last year, and 49 fewer IA vacancies than we did as compared to this time last year. So again, that is good news. Our lowest fill rate there is bus drivers, and we have spent several work sessions giving bus driver updates. So in the interest of time, I'll kind of keep those short, but happy to answer questions at the end when you have questions. The next slide here takes a look at our yearly vacancy trends, and this really just is for information for you. You can see the blue line there represents teachers, and because we have 11,000 teachers, and that's our largest category, it makes sense that our vacancy totals for most months would be highest among our teachers. You can see large spikes in July, and that's why I'm often hesitant to give you any data in July, because that's the busiest part of our hiring season. It's also when our systems are transitioning over from last year to this year. So we kind of see a new spike in July, but you can see decreases right after that time and starts to stabilize a little bit. You'll also see a little bump in vacancies there in December. That corresponds with our second semester, and you might see a little bit increase in resignations, but also positions being posted for that second semester. So you see that bump, and then it comes down pretty quickly as we get into January when that second semester starts. And you can see the drops too this year from August to September are pretty pronounced. So we've made progress over the past couple months there. Again, our bus driver vacancy is the outlier there on that graph, where you see that's remained steady and actually increased a bit over time. I want to give you a picture of just our total hiring since July. So we have had 1,100 new teachers to our district and rehired more than 900. And a rehire, just to review, is somebody who was with us the prior year but in a terminating position or on a terminating contract. Principal still needs to recommend them, we still need to process them, but they're not going through the full process because they were with us the prior year. But 1,100 new teachers is a large number for the summer, and that we've welcomed 230 new instructional assistants, as well as rehired 81 as well. So a total of 3,268 employees this summer. It's a big number, and 240 more than last year. So again, some good signs that hiring is picking up and we're having lower vacancy rates, but still work to do. And we'll talk about some of our ongoing recruitment efforts here, as well as some future as we progress into the school year. So we continue to use early contracts or early hire agreements. These are for folks who we identify early in the hiring process that maybe still are finishing up university prep work or meeting licensure requirements, but everything else looks good and we want to bring them on. So we issued this year 134 of those early hire agreements, and many of them are from our student teachers. So we have a process where we'll try to identify our student teachers who are with us, doing well in the classroom, and try to get them early hire agreement before they jump to another district. That's been a good strategy for us to get them on board. Also, we've increased our Participate teachers. These are international teachers. Really appreciate the relationship with Participate. We have hired an additional 38 teachers from Participate, so 76 new Participate teachers on board this year. And that brings us to 158 total in the district from 23 different countries. And this is not just about filling a vacancy. These are folks who bring rich cultural experiences into our classrooms. They are experienced teachers from other countries. So really appreciate and value this partnership. We also have increased advertising. We've talked a little bit about that. And I'm a work in progress, but I'm learning a lot about marketing and advertising. and appreciate our partnership with communications in that as well. So some of the things we do are search and display ads. So these are just ads that pop up when somebody's doing a Google search or using another search engine. We also have different advertising on radio, both traditional radio as well as some of our streaming services like iHeartRadio, Pandora, those kinds of things. And we also do advertising on social media now. Our most recent campaign also included 20 programmatic ads, and these are important because they allow these job searches to be visible beyond just our applicant tracking system. So when someone's searching, they can get directly to these jobs. So our last campaign ran June through August, and focused on recruiting general special ed teachers, IAs, bus drivers, mechanics, and safety assistants. That was our last campaign. And then we also have targeted recruitment landing pages. And again, we talked about these in the past, but this allows a candidate to express interest in us quickly without going through the full application process, and then we can in turn reach out and contact them. We also have, oops, sorry, went the wrong way there. We're also working on a refresh of our careers page. So again, we've done a little bit with the landing pages, but we're also doing a bit further, more work, including search engines and functions there. So now you will be able to go to our careers page and not only have to go into our applicant tracking system, but be able to search those job openings right from that careers page. So we think it's going to be a better interface for applicants looking for positions in our district. And that also will connect with our new applicant tracking system, which is iCIMS. And we'll talk a little bit about that transition. You've heard me speak about it in the past. But we are working very hard, Jason, Sally's team, over the past year to really get ready for that implementation. And we are close. So training has already begun for our principals and hiring manager. The first session is today. And then beginning October 11th, we'll actually be closing down new job applications through AppleTrack, and we will implement with iCIMS as of October 17th. And again, we not only look forward to the interface that the system will give for our applicants, but also the flow of data and the ease of processes on the HR side so that we can quickly get through some of these hires. So I am breezed through that as quickly as I could without shortcutting too much, and happy to take any questions that you all have.
I mean, you got 6 minutes left, so.
I knew I needed
well
some
done.
time for questions. So.
All right. Mr. Haggerty.
I've got one quick one. If you go back to, I think, page 3, where you have the different trends by positions, everything looked like it was going in the right direction, except, bus drivers were steady. But then you've got the IAs. It looks like you had vacancies heading up from August to September. Am I reading that right? Special ed IAs and IAs overall?
Yeah, that is a slight increase there.
And then on page 4, you did show the new hires, especially for IAs. And so I was just curious, is the problem attrition with current IAs? Is that a normal attrition rate from the beginning of school? Or is there something that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think looking at our overall sort of IA rate from last year being down 49 vacancies, I think we are in good shape. We always have some natural attrition at the beginning of the year as our data points kind of get set as well. But I think it's something we'll continue to look at.
Okay, appreciate it.
I'm just going to say I miss version funds too. Once upon a time.
So do our principals.
I did have one question, and that is, and I appreciate this update. My question is, can we get an update in the future on our maintenance and operations staffing? I know we have lost 100% of our chiller technicians from last year, of which we had one. But I think just an update for the public, I think, would be helpful, and recruitment efforts there, and maybe just where we are in terms of market rate, just so we know, what are our barriers with that? Because I think, this past month, we've all seen how that can impact our kids directly and their instruction. And would like for us to just have a lay of the land with that. Are there further questions?
And I can tell you also, Chairman Happy, we are going to target our next round of advertising for some of those positions as well. So we are aware and we'll work on that.
Further questions from board members? All right. It is 5:27. This work session is over.
Thank you so much. You are quite welcome. And I thought I was having myself together here by bringing mine. Oh, I know. I mean, I
Put this in the freezer so it'll be ready when it starts to blow up.
looks like yours is
Yeah.
Well, that's our second one. So